Hello and welcome back to my channel, everyone. Today I will be covering UFO sightings and alien encounters in my neighbor state of Minnesota. Before we get into it, please remember to like, subscribe, and comment as it really helps my channel out, and I very much appreciate it. If you want to check out more of my paranormal videos, you can click the pop-up on the top right corner for a full playlist. So without further ado, let's get into it. Police Chief spots flying yard light from the Pine City Pioneer, August 21st, 1969. What was that object flying around Pine City early Tuesday morning? Many persons would like to know the answer. About 4 a.m. on Tuesday morning, August 19th, Pine City Police Chief Norman Breezemeister noticed what he said looked like a flying yard light in the sky southwest of Pine City. He said that earlier in the morning, about 12:30 or 12:45, he had noticed to the southwest of Pine City what looked like extremely bright white lighting flashes. After spotting the bright flying yard light at 4 a.m., he drove the police car south on Interstate 35 to Highway 70, hoping to get a better look at it. By the time he reached Highway 70, he could not see it. Driving back north on I-35, he looked to the east and saw what he thought might be a fire at the Hins or Riser farm. He drove into town and then south on Highway 61 to the farms, but saw nothing. Turning back north, he looked toward Rock Lake, where it was very bright, as if there was a fire at the golf course. He drove out to the golf course, and as he arrived there, he saw nothing except a lot of dust, as if many cars had just left. However, only a very slight breeze was blowing, he stated. No light or any other unusual thing could be seen there, so he returned to town. The last time he spotted the light, it was about 5:20 a.m., flying northwest from Pine City. Other police personnel in Cambridge, Mara, and Malacca also reported seeing the bright object during the night, and a truck driver near Brainerd stated that he was forced to stop his truck as the light was so bright he couldn't see the road. Deputy Sheriff Tandy trails low-flying object. From the St. James Plain Dealer, November 13th, 1969. I was on a little township road west of Vernon Burgeson's when I first saw it. I saw this flashing red light north of me, and it didn't seem to move. That's how Deputy Sheriff Ernest Tandy described the start of his early morning experience with an unidentified flying object Wednesday. He set the time at about 2 a.m. and the place as being about 4 miles south and east of LaSalle. The light traveled toward Goodall, St. James, back towards Goodall, and then to the northeast before disappearing from sight, Tandy said. Verification of the object came from St. James patrolman Steve Benson, who spotted it after being alerted by Tandy via radio through the communications center. I just don't know what to think about it, Tandy told the plain dealer. I couldn't see anything other than a light, and there was no noise from it. I stood outside the car and watched it and listened to it, but there was no motor noise. It was low. Even trees would break the view of the red light, he said. The sky was clear early Wednesday morning when Tandy first saw the light. I stopped and watched it, the deputy said. It seemed to hover. A little bit later, it took off toward the northwest, and when it got over by Goodall Tower, it stopped again, then started towards the southwest. It made a big arc and seemed to be traveling faster and closer to the ground. It was then that he called the communications center, thinking perhaps it was an aircraft in trouble, a helicopter possibly. Patrolman Benson headed for the north part of St. James, and while out near Sonny's Supper Club, he spotted it. Tandy related that Benson exclaimed, "Holy smokes, that thing's just sitting on the ground." In continuing his description of the chain of events, Tandy said, "By then I had driven west and was over by Orville Madison's. about 2.5 miles south and west of LaSalle, when I spotted it again over the Goddard Tower. It was going in a northeasterly direction, and I followed it east along the county line road, Tandy said. Tandy said he notified Brown County authorities by radio as he drove east toward Hanska. It wasn't going very fast. It disappeared over the horizon, he said. Did anyone else see Wednesday's flying saucer? Give the plane dealer a call. Sheriffs chase flying saucers. From the New Ulm Journal, November 12, 1969. Most of the wild geese have gone south for the winter. However, people are still seeing things in the night sky. Shortly after 2 a.m., Wayton Deputy Sheriff Ernest Tandy said he spotted a big flashing red light not very far off the ground. At first, it didn't move, said Tandy, as he related the incident. Then it began to travel over towards the TV tower in Goddard. It stopped again, then started in a southwesterly direction. When it was directly west of me, I called Stephen Benson of the St. James Police and asked if he could see it. He couldn't see it at first, but he called back a little while later and said he had spotted the object. Then it went northwest toward New Ulm, less than 100 feet off the ground. It stopped at the west edge of Hanska, real close to the ground, and I could see it real good from where I was sitting on the county line road near LaSalle, Tandy went on. The wind was from the northwest, but I couldn't hear any motor noise or anything. At first I thought it was a lost airplane because it didn't travel in any definite direction. I got within a couple miles of the object, and I'm sure it wasn't an airplane, Tandy continued. I just don't know what it was. It's got me baffled. During the chase, Tandy called the Blue Earth County Sheriff's Office, and they sent a man up to the intersection of Highway 68 and 15 at New Ulm, but he didn't see anything, a Blue Earth Sheriff's officer said. Brown County Sheriff's dispatcher Patrick Mathowitz, on duty in New Ulm during the chase, said that on normal nights the sheriff's radio is busy. Numerous transmissions are picked up from neighboring departments, but during the chase, all radio traffic was at a standstill, and the radio was silent, except for one transmission picked up from 2 departments in Iowa. Apparently, one department, unaware of what was going on, tried to reach another on some routine business, but was squelched with this reply, "Shut up, I'm trying to hear what's going on up in Minnesota." UFO sighted. Skeptics scoff and observers wonder. From the Minnesota Sun, December 2nd, 1971. The sighting of a glowing object moving mysteriously across the southwest horizon shortly before midnight Monday has at least 15 policemen representing 5 towns and 2 counties rubbing their eyes in disbelief. Not one of them will admit it was a UFO, Air Force parlance for unidentified flying object, but they know what they saw. Too many of us saw it, reported Excelsior policeman Mike Weber. It had to be something. I still don't believe what I saw. I'm still skeptical, said Chaska police officer Bill Knoll. Mound Police, at least their chief, Pat Wilson, just won't talk about it. They didn't even write a report on the police call which came in at about 11 p.m. from the William D. Plesh residence in Minnetrista, describing the object and asking police to investigate. Said Wilson, I talked to the investigating officer, and he said since he couldn't explain it, he just wasn't going to write a report. But eyewitnesses at the Wood End Shores Plesh home said 2 Mound officers responded. At first, they didn't see anything, reported 14-year-old Susan Plesh, but later they came back and said about 15 policemen had seen it. They asked the boys to get in the car with them and go over to County Road 44 where the other police were looking at it. The boys, Pat Plesh, 17, Mark Plesh, 15, and Doug Stevenson, 16, confirmed the slowly moving lighted object was the same thing they had seen floating over their neighborhood. Susan said one of her brothers had spotted the object first. After alerting the others in the family, he called the neighbors. The senior plushes were not home, but those who watched it for more than an hour included Susan, her brothers Pat and Mark, a sister Maggie, 13, and Debbie Shaughnessy, 18, as well as Doug Stevenson. It looked like a flying saucer, all different colors, Susan reported. It moved up and down and sideways. They estimated the thing to be about 200 yards from their house and said it turned various colors, purple, green, and white. By this time, word had spread on the police radio. Excelsior Police received a call from Mound at 10:55 p.m. seeking confirmation of the sighting. Weber and two others, Charles Crepo and Harley Lindis, viewed the object from the Excelsior-Shorewood line on County Road 19. At that time, according to Weber, the glowing sphere appeared about 1,000 feet overhead, moving west and slightly south. The colors changed, he said, from red to green to white. The officers were joined by a Shorewood policeman, Dennis Siegfried, who also saw it. The men drove over to County Road 82 and Mill Street in Excelsior and again watched the glowing light appear to rest over the town of Chanhassen. Crepo photographed it with a telephoto lens. Meanwhile, Walt Thede, a Carver County Sheriff's deputy, received a call from his dispatcher saying the Hennepin County Sheriff's Office dispatcher had asked for assistance in identifying the object. Thede met 4 Hennepin County squad cars at the Conoco station in Chanhassen. I saw something in the southwest. I didn't see it close. I couldn't say it had any shape, he reported. He called Bill Knoll, Chaska police officer, who met Thede at Highway 5 and 41. Knoll said he got out of the car and saw a gleaming object moving in an easterly direction. It had an orange glow. It went right over me, very slowly. He reported the object made no noise as it passed over his head, although others said they had heard a humming sound. At about 11:45 p.m., the shining object appeared to disappear. Hennepin County Sheriff deputies checked with the Metropolitan Airport, where officials there tried to pick it up on the radar screen. They found no trace of it. So far, the only explanation offered comes from Sergeant Frank Kloss, Hennepin County Sheriff's Office. For 46 years, his age, I've seen the same star in the sky, he scoffed, adding that certain temperature and humidity conditions can make the star appear magnified and glowing. He said it may appear to move because the Earth is moving. He'll have a tough time convincing most of his fellow police officers. UFO sighted east of Douglas County. From the Lake Region Press, August 21st, 1969. An unidentified flying object was sighted over an area east of Douglas County early on Tuesday morning. More than usual interest is shown by the public since many disbelievers now are not so sure after man's own trips to the moon, Mars, and other points in outer space. This one was for real, although officials and other observers are rather dubious about its point of origin. There is suspicion it was a hoax. The lighted object was noticed first at about 3:45 Tuesday morning near Pine River. An officer thought a fire had started at the site of new construction on high ground and hurried to the spot but found no fire, only the air heavily laden with dust. The light moved over quite an area, unofficial report giving sighting in the areas of Princeton, Anoka, Elk River, Cambridge, and Malacca. Observers included deputy sheriffs in 2 counties and police of several towns. It was described as a real bright light at heights estimated from 1,500 to 2,000 feet for a considerable length of time. At times it seemed to hover over certain spots, then moved rapidly elsewhere in no consistent pattern. Last seen, it was traveling northwest at fair speed by policemen at Pine City. The Highway Patrol office at Brainerd served as clearinghouse for official reports, but the patrol did not follow it as they had no cars out for such purpose at the time. Other officers took care of it. The police department at Faribault made a suggestion later of the possibility of a man-made or boy-made fake, stating that what apparently were similar sightings occurred a dozen times last year around Faribault. It was learned that some youth had rigged up a flying object by making a light frame of wire over a light platform which weighed the bottom to keep the gadget upright, and on which they stuck a number of large candles. They covered the thing with plastic, lighted the candles, and they were in business. The flame from the candles heated the air inside the balloon, causing it to rise. The Faribault report stated that if it were not windy when such an object was launched, it would rise to perhaps 1,000 feet and would float around for 2 or 3 hours at changing pace and direction as various air currents were encountered. Some officials think some similar thing was done in this case, as the deputy who rushed to the scene of what he feared was a fire found the road a cloud of dust, which might indicate that pranksters had just taken off at high speed. On the other hand, the takeoff blast by a UFO would have kicked up a thick cloud of dust also, so the reader may draw his own conclusion. At least it was observed at length by a sufficient number of reliable people that it definitely is not a figment of imagination by some character seeking attention. Alexandria area apparently is of little interest to travelers from outer space, or wherever the UFOs come from, as very few sightings have been reported locally, and reports have been vague in most of those cases. An experience was reported by one young man supposed to have happened in the area between Long Prairie and Little Falls, which gained no believers, as most people considered his story overdone. About 60 miles west of Alexandria, in the border country, there have been 3 or more sightings which haven't received much publicity other than right around where they happened, but a number of people have been involved, so it is known there is something there. This reporter has not been privileged to see a UFO. One call turned out to be a weather balloon that drifted over, and another was a yard light reflection off a metal ventilator atop a dairy barn, so we've missed the thrill. UFO, SMSV, or what? Strange lighted object seen Tuesday evening. From the Star Farmer, June 18th, 1970. Several Renville residents, including the city patrolman on duty Tuesday evening, were observers of a strange object in the sky late Tuesday evening. At least 2 of the observers had watched the object, which carried a fairly bright red illumination, for well over an hour, and finally brought others to view their aerial curiosity. It was first seen at about 10:30 p.m. at some distance above the horizon to the northwest of Renville. It finally disappeared below the skyline at about midnight without varying its lateral position. Call it an unidentified flying object, slow-moving sky vehicle, or what have you. It was there, and it could have been anywhere from 3 to 10 miles distance, and it could have had any number of preferred explanations. Strange lights may be on schedule. From the Two Harbors Chronicle and Times, January 17th, 1974. More strange lights in the skies over the North Shore have been spotted by Two Harbors area residents. Two Harbors druggist Joseph Zastera and his wife Anne were returning from Duluth around 8 p.m. Tuesday when they saw several blinking lights in the sky overhead. They saw the lights about 1 mile this side of Larchmont. They didn't look like airplane lights, Zastera said, and were so unusual we stopped the car for a better look. They shut off the car engine and heard no sound of an airplane. Zastera said there were 3 lights, all a bluish-white color, about the hue of a fluorescent light bulb. The lights appeared to be traveling at a speed slower than an airplane yet faster than a helicopter. The druggist said it was difficult to tell, but estimated their height to be about 1/4 mile. They were traveling up the shore, he said. While the Zesteras were parked along the expressway, another Two Harbors resident also saw the lights and pulled over for a better look. UMD student Lee Karlstrom was returning from a lake class and described the object much the same as Zestera, although he believed there were 4 flashing lights, not 3. It's quite a coincidence, but I saw identical-looking lights at the same time and same location a week ago Tuesday night, Karlstrom explained. Next Tuesday, I'm going to bring my camera and look for it again. Zestera said he was certain the lights were no optical illusion nor reflection. The 3 residents said the lights just suddenly disappeared. 1 second they were there, and the next they were gone, they said. A week ago last Friday night, lights somewhat similar in appearance were spotted in the area by 5 residents at 2 different locations. Those seeing the lights included 2 sheriff's deputies, Andy Hagen and Fred Dufresne, and Dwight Moe, Philip Hallbeck, and his 12-year-old son. Radar doesn't spot unidentified lights in area. From the Two Harbors Chronicle and Times, January 10, 1974. They've returned, only this time bigger and better than ever. Last October, 2 law enforcement officers saw some strange, unidentified lights hovering over Pork City Hill in Two Harbors. The lights, it was noted at the time, could possibly have been some reflection from the nearby railroad yards. Last Friday night, however, an unidentified object was seen in the area by 2 different groups of persons in 2 different areas. The object did not show up on radar. About 8 p.m. Friday night, 2 deputies of the Lake County Sheriff's Department were traveling in the Waldo area several miles north of Two Harbors when they saw the object. Deputies Andy Hagen and Fred Dufresne were driving on a county road near Dr. David Arman's home in Waldo when they spotted 4 unbelievably bright lights in the sky. They stopped the car and watched them for about 30 seconds. The lights were described as the color and hue of a burning log or somewhat of a rust color. The center of each was so bright as nearly being white. Reflections from clouds was ruled out and visibility on the cold, cloudless night was said to be excellent. Although we only saw the lights, it appeared they were all on the same object, Hagen said, because as it moved, they remained the same distance from one another and in perfect formation. We turned off the car engine, he said, but heard no noise. The 4 lights were traveling west, then they banked to the southwest. At one time, it appeared to be about 800 feet over Silver Creek Cliff. Upon seeing the object, the deputies radioed to the Highway Patrol, who in turn contacted the Duluth Air Base, which scanned the entire area with radar. Hagen, who flies small aircraft, said even a small plane can be easily detected in the area once it is over the trees. The deputies saw 2 lights on the object's lower left side blink and then go out, and shortly after the 2 remaining lights also were extinguished. If the lights were all one object, then it was huge, Hagen said. It would have made a 747 jet look like a canary. Fred and I are glad that we both saw it, Hagen said. If I had seen it alone, I would have been afraid to mention it to anyone. But Dufresne and Hagen weren't the only ones to see the lights. The deputies also learned that 3 other area residents saw an identical sight while they were snowmobiling on Legler Lake, which is located near State Road 2, just north of the Marble Cane Lake area. Dwight Moe, Philip Hallbeck, and his 12-year-old son saw the 4 lights, also the color of a burning log, at about 7:20 p.m. This is about 40 minutes before the deputies spotted them. Again, these 3 heard no noise. They said the lights were traveling in a straight path, but appeared to be climbing in the sky. The deputies said they also radioed to the Silver Bay area of Lake County, but no other sightings were reported. Anyone having more information concerning the lights is asked to contact the Chronicle or Hagen. Dwight Moe told me he was a believer, Hoggins said. As for myself, I guess you'd say I'm not a disbeliever of UFOs. Anyway, all we know at this time for sure is that it remains unidentified. I've been getting a lot of ribbing since we saw it, Hoggins said. At one service station, the attendant kept looking nervously in the sky. Truck-sized UFO reported over city Tuesday night. From the Rochester Post-Bulletin, February 20th, 1974. A UFO bigger than a record truck and spewing flames buzzed northwest Rochester Tuesday night before disappearing in the vicinity of the Old City dump, several excited Elton Hills residents reported. Among those citing the UFO, unidentified flying object was a Rochester policeman and a service station operator. Patrolman James Priest, driving a squad car, and James Coleman, who runs the Clark station at 506 North Broadway and who was driving his tow truck, pursued the UFO along Elton Hills streets until losing sight of it near the Old City dump. I was really terrified when I first saw it, Coleman said today. He said it was about 11:25 p.m., and he was driving past Hillcrest Shopping Center when he saw the object in the sky, flying at about 100 feet towards me. Coleman described the UFO as bigger than a record truck with a kind of white dome shell on top. He said it seemed to be powered by what looked like several small afterburners flaming from the bottom. It cruised slowly right over my head in a northeasterly direction, said Coleman, who gave chase in his truck. He was joined in the pursuit by Patrolman Priest, who spotted it as he drove north on US 52. He turned east at the 19th Street Northwest exit to follow the object into Elton Hills. Whatever it was, Priest told the dispatcher at the police department, it was seen to have flames coming from it. Coleman, who has a Citizens Band radio in his truck, said he heard chatter on his radio from Elton Hills residents who also were talking about the sighting. Coleman said he and Priest stopped to compare notes about the UFO to make sure they had seen the same thing. A second police officer car was sent to help search for the UFO, but it had vanished. Coleman said he saw a UFO 6 years ago near Orinoco, but this one was altogether different. I really believe in them, he said. The control tower at Rochester Municipal Airport said nothing strange was seen in the sky at the time the UFO was reported, and nothing was tracked on radar. UFO reported seen near New Brighton. From the Minneapolis Star, August 6, 1974. A flying saucer was reported by some residents of the New Brighton area early today, but a Ramsey County Sheriff's deputy who verified the sighting said it appeared that the object was a slow-flying airplane at a high altitude. The UFO was first reported to the sheriff's office by a woman living at the north end of Long Lake in New Brighton at 12:59 a.m. 2 New Brighton police officers said they also saw the red, green, blue, and purple flashing lights in the sky, but in their report said nothing about seeing any object attached to the lights. Ramsey Deputy Sheriff Bernard Witzman said that he looked up in the sky when he heard the dispatcher give the report to the New Brighton squad car, and that he too saw red, green, and white flashing lights. I assumed the lights were those of an airplane, he said today. Apparently it was flying in circles and so high that it appeared to be hovering in one place. It was over the New Brighton area, he said, adding that it appeared to be at such a high altitude that he couldn't hear it. I assume it was the same object reported by the New Brighton people. Alleged UFO sightings reported. From the Bemidji Pioneer, April 7, 1975. Allegations of UFOs hit closer to home last Wednesday as several people reported sightings of objects hovering, darting, and blinking east of Cass Lake. John and Peter Nieces first spotted the moving lights while snowmobiling at approximately 9 p.m. on April 2nd. After obtaining binoculars, a closer look at one revealed what they described as a sort of diamond-shaped form with 3 flashing red and green lights. Several others joined the boys at the wayside rest area bordering the lake, including their father, Mayor Dick Nieces, and police officer James Davies. Both confirmed the incident. When I first went down to the lake, all I noticed was a small white dot at the end of the handle of the Big Dipper. I didn't think it had that many stars. As I was watching it, it moved across the sky in a southeasterly direction and disappeared quickly in about 3 seconds. I've never seen anything move that fast, Nieces commented. Then another white dot moved from west to east very rapidly. What captured the most attention was the stationary object that remained within sight for approximately an hour, they estimate. It was hard to make out a definite form or shape to it, but it did have flashing green and red lights. I don't know for sure what it was. What it wasn't was an airplane or something else identifiable, Davies added. While making their observations, another set of lights crossed the sky. According to Davies, a jet passed near the stationary object. A sonic boom was heard, and a smaller white dot approached the plane. It, one dot, made a sharp right-angle turn and started after the plane, John Nieces explained. Going twice as fast as the jet, it just passed him up. Davies added that at this point, the dot veered off and disappeared. Eventually, it was reported the green and red lighted form left in a southerly direction. Officer Davies contacted the Cass County Sheriff's Department, but was informed no other observations had been made that evening. UFOs seen in area. From the Chronicle and Times, April 9, 1975. Several UFO sightings in the Knife River Valley area were reported last week by a number of persons. A week ago Sunday evening, white light was reportedly hovering in the valley area, several miles northwest of Two Harbors. Later that evening, in a separate instance, a white light was again seen. It came down over a field, moved slowly across it, and then disappeared into the sky. About 9:30 p.m. Wednesday night, the same person who saw the light the Sunday night before saw some red and white lights hovering over a home for some time in the same area. 2 persons witnessed that event, and both reported a hovering or hissing noise. Also that night, there were numerous reports of unusual red and green lights in the vicinity of the Two Harbors Municipal Airport. About 5 or 6 a.m. Thursday, 3 individuals reportedly saw an oval-shaped object near their house, also in the valley area. They saw it hovering for several minutes before it left. Sources, who wish to remain unidentified, said the University of Wisconsin contacted at least one of the persons who made the sightings last week. The U of W Inquisitor told the local resident that numerous sightings of lights and other UFOs have been reported recently in upper Michigan and northern Wisconsin and Minnesota. "I don't know what's up there," said one person contacted regarding the matter. "It's something. Maybe I don't even want to know." UFO sighting makes believers of skeptics. From the Lindstrom Press, August 20th, 1975. It was just another night at the lake as Donald Peterson sat down on the edge of his bed. But what he saw out his bedroom window turned a lazy summer night into an experience neither he nor his wife will probably ever forget. As the couple inquisitively gazed out their window overlooking Horseshoe Lake in central Chisago County, they saw a large orange object hovering above the lake. Skeptics before, the UFO made believers out of them. The Petersons, from Bloomington, had just retired for the evening when the incident occurred. It was 10 minutes to 11 and a very black night. It was a UFO, Peterson said of the object. It couldn't have been anything else. It was a spectacular sight to see. Peterson, who used to be in the Air Force, explained that it was as large as a plane, but was definitely like nothing he had ever seen before. Familiar with aircraft, he said a plane could not hover like this object did. He indicated they could not make out a definite shape to the UFO since the orange glow around it was so bright. As the UFO hovered over the lake about 800 yards from the Petersons, a light extended downward from the craft, reflecting across the lake. There was no light, however, radiating upward. The Petersons watched the object for about 3 or 4 minutes before it began to move away at treetop level. The couple indicated that their bedroom window was open, but they could hear absolutely no sound from the UFO. Both said they were not frightened by the object, but that they might have felt differently if the UFO had begun to move in their direction. There was only one aspect of the whole incident that made the Petersons a little disturbed. It made me feel kind of sick to think that I own 3 pairs of binoculars and did not have even one of them at the lake, Peterson commented. It was a sight the Petersons feel they will probably never see again. 2 Chisago County deputies reportedly also sighted a UFO the same night as the Petersons. Details of their sighting were not available at press time. Possibly a meteor. Farm northeast of city visited by a UFO. From the Rochester Post-Bulletin, August 7, 1975. An unidentified flying object apparently came down Wednesday night on a Cascade Township farm in suburban northwest Rochester, leaving a 15 by 30-foot oval-shaped brown patch in an alfalfa field. At least 2 farmers saw a blazing object speed earthward and land in the alfalfa field of 59-year-old Willard Anderson, an Olmsted County agriculture inspector. One of the farmers who saw the object was Donald Prigge, 50, who farms next to Anderson. Prigge said he was raking hay at 8:50 p.m. when he saw the bright UFO come down on Anderson's farm. He telephoned his neighbor and jokingly asked if he had seen a spacecraft land, but Anderson said today he didn't think much about it at the time. Now he's not so sure. For Prigge, it was the second sighting of a UFO. He said he saw his first one about 25 years ago north of Rochester. Anderson, who did not see or hear anything unusual, went to bed and only went out to inspect the alfalfa field this morning at the urging of his wife, Donna. I found a brown patch about 15 by 30 feet in the alfalfa field, Anderson said. The field, about 800 feet from the house, is green, except for the mysterious brown patch. I don't know what caused it, he said, but it wasn't there yesterday. Another farmer, 45-year-old Ivan Benkin of Haverhill Township, said he was driving to Rochester with his daughter Lisa, 16, and was on Geisinger Hill, northeast of Rochester, when he saw a big red ball of fire crash and explode about 8:50 p.m. It looked like it was heading right for the city from where we were, said Benkin. Visitors to the Anderson farm this morning described the patch as brown from the heat. They said there was no sign of flame or charring, but the alfalfa flowers were withered as if by heat. There were mottled places of green in the brown patch, one visitor said, but the lines of the brown patch were clearly discernible. Air traffic controllers at Rochester Airport reported a meteor southwest of the airport Wednesday night, but nothing in the northwest. However, astronomers report August as being the month of meteors each year, and one expert said the farmers probably saw what is called a bolide, a meteoroid that exploded in space with a fiery splinter reaching Earth as a meteorite. A check of UFO sightings over Rochester in the past 15 years shows that 90% of them were made during August. The others were in September and June. The arrival of the UFO coincided with the debut of the Time Theater of a movie called The Outer Space Connection, a tale based on the premise that Earth has been visited by space travelers in past years. But none of the three farmers have seen the movie. UFOs, or what? From the Farmington Tribune, September 25th, 1975. Last week, the Tribune asked for a chance to photograph anything considered to be an unidentified flying object. We got the opportunity. At 4:30 a.m. Monday, Officer Dan Churchill of the Farmington Police Department called this writer, and we viewed 2 UFOs from a spot along County 31. At least 2 other witnesses were Officer Brent Moody, on duty in Apple Valley, and Deputy Sheriff Gary McLeod. The top 2 pictures show a star-like object to the southeast over Farmington. It changed color from blue to orange and to red. Most fascinating, and different from stars, was the fact that it moved, swung back and forth, and up and down. The pictures were made with the camera on a tripod and with a 300mm telephoto lens at a 15-second exposure. The odd shapes shown are the result of the thing moving about. The lower picture is of a reddish, glowing, stationary object which suddenly appeared just off the eastern horizon. "That's the mothership," joked reporter Phyllis Broseth when looking at the pictures later. An aide to Congressman Al Huey said that no one is now officially investigating reported UFOs. The Air Force did have jurisdiction over this, but they are no longer taking reports of sightings. Air Force Colonel Raymond Tilton of Apple Valley said that as far as he knows, there is no agency in the Twin Cities area that investigates them. "We now have 3 books from the Farmington Library on flying saucers and will read up on the subject. What did we see? No one seems to know. Persons interested are advised to arise at 4:30 a.m. every morning and look over the clear, chilly sky. They just might spot something." Seven officers watch early morning UFOs. From the Farmington Tribune, September 18th, 1975. "It's a bird. It's a plane. No, it's a..." That was the question facing 5 Dakota County police officers and 2 Minnesota State troopers in the early morning hours Friday, September 12th. First to observe the unidentified flying object was Farmington police officer Mark Tarman. The mysterious incident began about 4:05 a.m. north of Farmington and continued for about 1.5 hours. The Federal Aviation Agency was notified and they denied any sightings, though in a later telephone call, they did say they had some activity in that area. However, it could not be determined what the object was. In an interview with Officer Tarman this week, he gave an account of that clear, brisk morning. He was sitting in the squad car on the Pine Knoll entrance facing east, going to return back into Farmington, when he observed a bright star just above the tree line in the east. At first he thought it was an extremely bright star with a bluish hue. However, it began to move from the horizon and move around in a circular motion, then up and down. Officer Tarman then observed another bright object to the north of the first one at a 45-degree angle. This object was equally as bright. He continued to think they were possibly bright stars which stood out from the rest in the night sky. As he continued to watch and admire how bright they were, the bottom object went up to the top object where it remained for an instant, and then went back down to its original location. Officer Tarman called the Dakota County dispatcher to notify the FAA center to see if anything was being picked up on radar. During the first call to the FAA, they stated there was nothing on the radar screen. At this point, he drove to County Road 31 and 9, where he met Officer Tom Ingram from Apple Valley. They observed the objects which were stationary at this time. The two officers then began discussing what they had seen when the lower object went back up to meet the top object again and remained there for a few seconds before it went back to its original location. Ingram then called the dispatcher, who contacted the FAA once again. This time, they confirmed there was some action in that area. However, they could not determine what the object was. They said they would lock the radar onto it and see what developed. At this point, officers from Rosemont, Lakeville, Eagan, and 2 Minnesota state troopers had heard the conversation on the radios and began to drift to County Road 31 and 9. The 7 law enforcement officers watched the two objects for about a half an hour as the bottom object moved slowly around. The officers began to leave, with Officers Tarman, Ingram, and a highway trooper remaining until about 5:30 a.m. As they were beginning to depart, they looked to the southwest, and an object, orange-white in color, shaped like the head of a bullet with about 1/2 the brilliance of the other 2 unidentified objects, streaked from the southwest to the northeast. As it passed by the 2 other objects, they all disappeared. Officer Tarman said the last unidentified object moved at a rapid rate of speed. About a week ago, a similar sighting was observed in Farmington by a local resident and police officer Dan Churchill. Weird ring stumps farmer. From the Starbuck Times, September 17, 1975. "No one knows what it is," said Gordon Hovendick. "It's weird." Hovendick had cut his 3rd crop of alfalfa and was raking it into rows last week when he noticed a dark ring in the middle of the alfalfa field. The ring was about 10 feet in diameter, almost perfectly circular, about 8 inches wide, and smoky gray. A few small patches were scattered within the ring. The gray substance was powdery, grew both on alfalfa stems and pigeon weeds, and would grow no higher than 4 inches off the ground. Hovendick said this is the first year he has grown alfalfa on the field. The last 2 years, corn was grown on the land. Hovendick said he is going to bring a sample of the substance to Thomas Straw, biology professor at the University of Minnesota Morris. If anyone knows what it is, let the Times know. Here's an educated guess as to what the weird ring might be. It's the mycelium of the fairy ring mushroom, Marasmias oridaeus. Mycelium is comprised of millions of growing cells and is that part of mushrooms which endures from year to year. The mildew on bread, the mold on jelly, and the cottony growth of the forest floor are all mushroom mycelium. It grows from year to year, lying dormant in winter and in dry periods, but becomes active when conditions are favorable. It is from this actively growing mycelium, whose lifespan is measured in years, decades, or even centuries, that the mushroom arises for its brief appearance. Evidence of the longevity of mycelium is found in fairy rings, those remarkable circles that fairies are supposed to leave behind after dancing all night. The rings, found in meadows, lawns, and fields, are formed in this way. A few spores of one of the fairy ring mushrooms fall upon a favorable place and begin to grow. If the soil is fairly uniform, an approximately circular patch of mycelium develops. The mycelium does not seem to be able to grow in the same place for a long time, so the mycelium migrates outward, leaving the middle of the ring as though the mycelium has never grown there. After a few years, mushrooms spring up near the outer border of this circle. Lack of uniformity in the soil or digging in the ring may interrupt the regular outward growth of mycelium, so few complete circles are found. Some circles have grown to 50 feet in diameter. By measuring the rate of outward advance over a period of years, botanists have calculated that some of the fairy rings are almost 4 centuries old. Gordon Hovendick thinks the ring in his alfalfa field could be evidence of a UFO, but the midnight fairies might be closer to the truth. Thank you for watching this video. I hope you liked it. What state should I cover next? A quick shout out to Vanity Scar 424 for suggesting Minnesota for this week's video. If you have your own scary story or close encounter to share, you can either send it in the comments, post on my subreddit, r/ihaveaspookystory, or send it to my Gmail, pinkpossiblystories@gmail.com. Maybe your story will be in a future video. Good night, sleep tight, and don't let the shadows bite.